These are my parents. They have been married over 30 years and have a lot in common. Unfortunately, one of those things they have in common is that both of their fathers died at a young age. So I never had a grandpa growing up. I never met either of them and didn't know much about them. In fact, we only have one picture of each of them at home. This is my Grandpa Nick on my mother's side. He passed away when my mom was 11 years old. She herself did not know much about him and had to grow up not knowing what it was like to have a father's influence. Like in this picture on her wedding day, when her oldest brother Jack walked her down the aisle, as he did with his other 5 sisters. This is the best way my mom could describe her father.
He was very stern and not very affectionate. He came to this country when he was 12 years old, and he never spoke a word of English. And they put him to school right away, and I think that really had an impact on him. I think it made him very shy, and it made him very introverted. He was a very loving husband to my mother, but he could never really translate that into his kids. And so I was always just a little bit afraid of him. He was always very good to us, and he always provided a very good living, but there was always something a little bit standoffish about him. He died when I was very young. I was 11, and he was only about 52. So I never got to know him as an adult, which is too bad because I think that we probably could have had a much better relationship. I know my mother raised 9 kids by herself, and so she was always very busy. But once we were older, we got to be very good friends with her, and that would have been nice to have had that with my father.
This is my Grandpa King on my father's side, pictured with my grandma on their wedding day. He passed away when my father was in his early 20s. He was a good influence on my father early in life, but as my father grew older, he wasn't there for him as much. Here is what my father had to say about him.
He was pretty diligent as far as working. He was a good provider. He liked to bowl, and he was a member of the Teamsters. He was in the union. They used to fish down the St. Clair River and the Black River, and then he eventually bought a boat, and that was a lot of fun because we got to go out to the lake. And he was a truck driver by trade. He did a lot of different types of truck driving job. When I first realized what he did, he drove a cement truck. He didn't really do much outdoor stuff. He didn't like hunting, fishing, or any of that kind of stuff.
Not knowing who my grandpas were always made me curious as to what I would have liked about each of them. I asked my parents the best thing I would have liked about each of them.
He had a good sense of humor. You'd have liked that about him. He had a real good sense of humor.
He was as honest as the day is long. If you asked him a question, he would answer that as honestly as he could. He had a very soft spot for young children. Young children could do nothing wrong. It was as they got older and then he was more standoffish, but he loved babies, he loved little children. He was very kind. He just didn't know how to relate always to his older children.